Since the dawn of time, men have been getting their Johnsons stuck in planes, trains, and automobiles. Because while known to very few, these freaky fellas actually belong to a notorious furry subgroup of airplane lovers. The men and women who boom to airplanes with boobs. A mysterious online community whose behavior is considered so extreme, even the furry fandom rejects them. But why? What was too weird even for other furries? How did that guy from Washington State have enough time to fuck 1,000 tailpipes? And most pressingly, why don't we understand anything about this fetish? Today's case involves a Puerto Rican furry, an airline pilot, and the little engine that could. This is the wild story of airplane gooners.
Maybe I'm missing out on something.
Today's freaky file: Borus, Boeings, and the men that bone them. So if you've never heard of this before, anthroplanes, better known as aeromorphs, are adult depictions of aircraft with jiggly human qualities. Usually busty female airplanes with exaggerated features and of enormous size. The cockpit becomes the head, the wings become the arms, and the cargo hold becomes the cargo hold. And amazingly, almost all of the aeromorph artwork out there was actually influenced by one furry, who we will come back to. But you may be asking yourself, this is just some deviant art stuff. No one's actually fondled a fighter jet or banged a Black Hawk. Luckily for us, one of the only reasons we even know these people exist is because they seemingly can't keep their hands inside the vehicle at all times. It's time to talk about car fuckers.
What? Oh, I know this
2023,
guy.
Germany. It would turn out that there is one more level above the Mile High Club, and its sole occupant is 24-year-old Sarah Rodo. After having a profound experience on a Boeing 737, Sarah realized that planes could do for her what no man ever could. She's since devoted enormous amounts of money and time to collecting airplane models, getting airplane tattoos, and going on no fewer than 30 vacations for the sole purpose of riding the plane. To her, the planes are all a single collective being that she's nicknamed Dickie. So flying on one doesn't mean she's cheating on another. And while some of the comments on her interview are somewhat unsympathetic, they miss a pretty important point. Sarah is what's known as an objectum sexual. That is, someone who experiences an exclusive attraction to an inanimate object. She just happened to land on airplanes before anything else. But this hardly stops with planes. 1973, a forensic biologist stumbles upon what is arguably one of the first documented cases of car-related goonicide. Beginning that year, J.C. Rupp chronicled several highly unusual deaths involving nude, middle-aged men and their cars. But unlike what you may be thinking, these guys did not mean to harm themselves. It quickly became apparent that while they perished due to strangulation by being dragged by the neck behind their cars, these men were choking the chicken literally by rigging their cars to do this for their own pleasure. You can probably imagine how this might go wrong. In a bizarre coincidence, a 40-year-old airline pilot was actually one of the few recorded cases of erotic car-related goon death. And
he was married. He was married with 2 children.
Airline pilot was actually one of the few recorded cases of erotic car-related goon death, and he was far from the last, because by the mid-2000s, dozens of accounts of man on exhaust pipe action had made their way into the public consciousness, and no vehicle was safe. 2007, a British man is convicted of sexual breach of the peace after 2 hotel workers break into his room, not cool by the way, and find him riding his motorcycle in the most literal sense. 2015, a live leak user uploads CCTV footage of a Thai man readjusting the hood ornament of a Porsche over and over and over with his dong. We don't know if the Porsche was his. 2016, professional Dutch person Kees van Voorst goes on TV to explain his ongoing polycule with 30 bicycles. 2024. D'Angelo Antoine Covington is re-jailed after publicly professing his love for a train seat in front of horrified onlookers. And my personal favorite, the 2018 incident of the Kansas man who wouldn't stop inserting himself into a tailpipe until he was tased into submission. But before we go on, this video is kindly sponsored by Raycon. Raycon gives you the same audio quality as the big guys at half the price. They just launched their upgraded model of the best-selling everyday earbuds, and I can can tell you, as someone who's worn these for hours of video editing, this is the real deal. They have this really cozy ergonomic design that fits right into your ear.
it
Just
should have
give it
been
a
me.
twist. Multi-point connections, so you can pair to 2 devices at once, which is super convenient if you're constantly going between your phone and laptop like me, and active noise cancellation. The everyday earbuds also come in a variety of vibrant colors that complement any skin tone. My Raycons are green with this beautiful sunset yellow case. My favorite thing about the upgraded model has absolutely got to be the 10-minute quick charge that gives you 90 minutes of battery life. While I have used other earbuds in the past, I find these to be incredibly reliable, and the sound quality is fantastic for how affordable they are. Click the link in the description box or go to buyraycon.com/scum to get 15% off your Raycon purchase, plus free shipping. Thank you so much to Raycon for sponsoring this video, and on with the show. But let's take a step back. Who's to say that these aren't just isolated incidents? How can we be sure that they're all connected to a singular fetish? What makes this fetish any different from the man who sexually enslaved his Sally Acorn doll? All the insight we need comes from the self-professed king of car coomers, the man who claims to have slept with over 1,000 vehicles since he was 15. Edward freaking Smith. And though these are cars, not planes, his reasoning might actually explain both. As a 57-year-old Smith explained in a 2008 interview, women simply don't interest him. At the time, Smith was in an open relationship with the Volkswagen Beetle, the Opel GT, and the Ford Ranger Splash. But his love affair started very early in his life. At 13, shortly after hitting puberty, he recalls experiencing an odd full-body sensation after he saw the Corvette Stingray for the first time. He knew there would be no going back. Since then, he's been unable to stop himself from kissing, hugging, and fondling cars that he finds attractive, even if they don't belong to him. Though to be clear, no one's inside when he does that. As he puts it, I appreciate beauty and I go a little bit beyond. I write poetry about cars, I sing to them and talk to them just like a girlfriend. I know what's in my heart and I have no desire to change. I'm not sick and I don't want to hurt anyone. Cars are just my preference. There are moments way out in the middle of nowhere where I see a little car parked and I swear it needs loving. There have been certain cars that attracted me and I would wait until nighttime, creep up to them, and just hug and kiss them. As far as women go, they never really interested me much. And I'm not gay. And he's not gay.
He's
and the
not
list
gay.
Of IRL machine lovers is probably well over several thousand people now. But you may have noticed that there's a bit of a spectrum here. The aeromorph artwork is distinctly human, but even among plane lovers, there's a gradient between a plane that is mostly woman and a woman as embodied by any regular machine. Which leads us to the million-dollar question. What about this do people like? Welcome to a crash course in plane smut. On the most basic level, online coomers have always been obsessed with taking a concept or object and turning it into a pretty lady. And simply looking at some of the top posts on the Aeromorph subreddit, it's easy to see why. These planes are super curvaceous, with everything from shapely legs to stripper heels to piercings to a face full of makeup. They're mostly women with a coat of weather-resistant paint. As adult creator Maya Ben David explains about her popular airplane cosplay video, I have always found anthropomorphic objects very sexy and relatable. Their position as objects made for human use changes when they become alive, and I liked that tension. I liked the relationship of the anthroplane and pilot, at least in the fictions I have created. The anthroplane swallows the pilot and passengers and becomes pregnant with their baggage while carrying them around. And it's no coincidence that the majority of these planes are depicted as women. Planes are vessels. They represent an enormous threat, but they also physically cradle the life of the pilot and passengers within. There's something very womb-like about it, which is why it's no shock that a lot of aeromorph enjoyers also overlap with the vor and macro communities. That is, those who enjoy the idea of being swallowed or interacting with a giant, respectively. And that's hardly where the crossover ends. Aeromorph artist Moser the Dozer believes that, quote, the sleek aerodynamic shape of their heads and metallic skin invokes the same appeal as full-body latex suits. And he makes another unintuitive but absolutely correct observation. Fetishes like having oversized body parts, being inflated, being eaten alive, etc. are in a way much more practical for a being made of impenetrable steel than for a delicate being with skin and organs. These are fundamentally giant, dangerous, powerful women with enormous racks. And I think explained this way, it makes sense. But where it becomes an entirely different matter is in the case of our aforementioned car lovers. And there's really two levels to it. The guys born with it and the guys molded by it. For the latter group, it's easy to see how decades of watching car commercials where women sell you the idea of luxury and status could warp your brain. And as for the former group, these guys are purely in it for the mechanics. They find especially arousing the idea that a car or a plane can have an external body that anyone can touch, concealing intimate parts within. But they don't humanize their subject much at all, because a lot of them are what's known as mechanophiles.
Stop touching it like that.
As psychologist Simone Nelson explains, some mechanophiles just like seeing how their object works. It's the tantalizing illusion of life that one can turn on or off. For some, it's the motion of the pistons thrusting. For others, it's seeing fumes come out of the tailpipe, and so forth. Cold, hard metal and sensual bodies, as a Vice article claims.
That's so sensual.
And while there are cases every year where people get themselves stuck in tailpipes and washing machines and vacuum hoses, the distinguishing factor is this. Are they obsessed with that feeling, or are they obsessed with the machine? When it comes to people like Edward Smith and Sarah Rodo, however, there remains one mysterious other explanation. Objectum sexual. Which, fun fact, that term was invented by the woman who became famous for marrying the Eiffel Tower. Frustrated with people's lack of understanding, she came up with this word to explain her genuine lack of interest in human sexual connections. Like other objectum sexuals, she developed a deep and extremely emotional connection to the Eiffel Tower, viewing it as a consenting partner of equal status. While there's very little research into the sexuality at all, the consensus seems to be that it is not just a fetish. It's a legit orientation that actually affects a tiny percentage of the human race. And while there's even less research into that, scientists speculate that attraction to objects is overrepresented in people on the autism spectrum.
That makes sense. Rhythm with the tism. That's crazy.
And another group famously overrepresented on the spectrum? Furries. I told you we'd come back to this. The furry autism connection has been widely documented by members in and out of the community. And I bring this up because airplane lovers are so poorly understood that you can kind of only explain them in the context of other fetishes. Anthro, short for anthropomorphized, is a very well-established tradition in the furry art world, where artists confer human traits to subjects, usually in the form of eyes, mouth,
she's kind of a baddie though.
And various holes. Since the dawn of the internet and ostensibly the dawn of time, artists have been dreaming up voluptuous versions of everything from Windows 95 to sink dogs to entire countries. But as mentioned before, aeromorphs are deeply frowned upon in the furry community, which begs the question, what part of this then is furry? Anthroplanes, in spite of the fact that they are planes, embody so many of the same traits as anthro-furry art and are so bafflingly different from any other subgenre of adult art that the furry porn sites just host it anyway. And if you don't believe me, just take a look at the hundreds of sexy anthro-planes on adult furry sites like E621. And that's partially because the great-granddaddy of aeromorph art is himself a legendary furry. Since 2010, Walter William Sache, known also as W. Sache 007, has been creating highly sensual artwork of planes, cars, and horses wearing latex. And the more of his artwork you look at, the clearer the connection becomes between furries and aeromorphs. Some are much more distinctly jet-like, while others have hybrid animal features like beaks and clawed feet. And in one of the only comprehensive articles about aeromorphs that exists, W. Sache is credited as being the single biggest influence on this entire thing. And from the captions on his plane art alone, it's pretty clear to see what about this calls to him.
The art is pretty good.
Goddess of speed. As one may find her performance quite appealing, her presence of actions will indeed leave her enemies lost in their grief or shame. For no one and no man may ever catch up to her. Magnificent beauty who flies and dwells among the skies. Not now, not ever. And unfortunately, outside of W. Sache, several moderators on the Aeromorph subreddit, and ragebait articles by the Daily Mail, we know nearly nothing else about this elusive community. The only thing we as observers can go off is the testimony of plane lovers themselves. In their small Reddit community, users proclaim their affinity for their plane foos. Airplane waifus, and express a desire to turn some of these planes white with their bodily fluids. But others genuinely find them cute and take an intense fascination fascination with their inner workings in a somewhat non-sexual way. Individually, all of these factors come together into the aeromorph fetish. Planes, machines, anthro-furry traits, submission to a giant being. As one journalist so succinctly put it, there's something innocent about it all, despite it literally being smut. It's like a childhood obsession with airplanes, all grown up. At very least, the aeromorph fetish shows a veneration for the majesty of aircraft.
I don't know.
It just helps that the planes have giant bazongas, too.
Yeah.
So to put a bow on this, does the aeromorph fetish actually hurt anyone? Online? No. In real life, a little bit, depending on how tantalizing you personally find a nice tailpipe. But out of all the controversial DeviantArt fetishes, this is arguably one of the least understood and least harmful. But it's probably for the best that this doesn't take off.
I guess.
This has been the Freaky Files.
That's so crazy.
Thank you so much to the patrons for making this possible. My sincerest appreciation, as always, to the Stone Brotherhood, Beelzebub, Fat Pug, Freppy, Green Goat, Kale, Kitty Has Fleece, Kyle, Matt Voltron, Maxie, Rotten Pie, Scoo, and Slaughter 3D.
Put bazonkas on it and it's all good.
Babies, Acidic, Alex, Alexander First, Angel Perez Calzada, Apoptosis Necrosis, Baker, Kara,
I didn't even know this was real.
Evaya, Ezra Laro, Fad Foff, Fezza 570, Insane Freak, Jake McGuckin, Jasper, Joshua
but I
DA,
can understand.
Colbert Berg, Kraken Jokes,
Like,
Chris,
this airplane
Literally
girl's kind of a
Deadicide,
baddie.
Max J, McBallin, Raymundo 2112, Red Blaze 27, Sam, Sethington, Sheebs, Splendid Cowhoof, Sabaton, Tommy V, Tyler H, and Unclear Rain.